support for all those other countries who are facing the threat of death penalty in their countries. However, we do know that we here in the Philippines we face the same threats, and so today we give light to the plight of those in detention facing the threat of death penalty, as well as their friends, families, and other loved ones. To formally welcome you to this program, I invite Commissioner Karen Gomez-Ductic of the Commission on Human Rights for her opening remarks.
Isang magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Good morning to everyone. First and foremost, I would like to welcome our friends from the Diplomatic Corps, Deputy Ambassador Amalia Fuentes of the Embassy of Spain, of course, Mr. Juan Pita of the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation, Ms. Serena Delangelo, Office of the Ambassador of the EU Delegation to the Philippines, Mr. Margarito Rainera, Delegation of the European Union to the Philippines as well, our university-based Dialogues on Death Penalty Network partner, Dr. Grace Gorospe Hamon of the University of the Philippines in Clark, UP Clark. We'd like to also greet our partner for today as well, the Coalition Against the Death Penalty. The Commission is a member of that, headed by, of course, Brother Rudy Diamante. And, of course, we have to greet also from the Embassy of Switzerland, Saskia Kobel, and of course, Mr. Chris Hayes, all the way from Australia. He's a member of the Federal Parliament of Australia. Our media partners are here, UNTV, ABS-CBN, Light TV, DZXL, RMN, and Rappler. And our partners, De La Salle University, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International PH, the Office of Congressman Kit Belmonte. We also have the French Ambassador, His Excellency Nicolas Daly. Thank you for coming. And again, a blessed morning to all of you. Today, we join hands with the Coalition Against the Death Penalty as we celebrate the 16th World Day Against the Death Penalty. We thank you for gracing us with your presence. We are very honored to be with friends and allies in our advocacy against the reimposition of the death penalty. I would also like to extend our thanks to those who helped organize this activity and for the support of the Asia-Pacific Forum of National Human Rights Institutions, the United Nations Development Fund, and the Australian National University, who have been instrumental in this advocacy. Today, we have a great opportunity to raise awareness and to inform you about some progress that we have had on issues surrounding the right to life, the death penalty, and its implications in the Philippines. To provide a background, 2 years ago, the current administration identified reinstatement of the capital punishment as its priority legislation. The President made this his election campaign promise with the objective of ending rising criminality. In fact, in his 2018 SONA, or the State of the Nation address, he once again renewed his call for Congress to reinstate the death penalty as the only way to instill fear, not only citing deterrence, but also for retribution. The supporters of the death penalty bill, besides citing deterrence to crime as the main rationale for the reintroduction of capital punishment, speak of public opinion as another strong argument to bring back such punishment for heinous crimes. Past surveys only had 1 or 2 close-ended questions about the death penalty, which could not be a real measurement of public opinion, in our opinion. We have been wondering why a peace-loving people such as the Filipinos, where perhaps over 80% are Catholics, would want the death penalty imposed or reimposed. And so, we took inspiration from a survey used in Japan that utilize the iceberg model and customize this to suit the needs of our survey, which we will present today. On the surface, public opinion swings toward favoring the death penalty. But as one goes beyond the tip of the iceberg, layers and masses of conditions and intentions abound. We like to think that those who favor the death penalty in reality really want something done about crime, us included. It's a yearning for justice. A quantitative study of this kind is a first in the Philippines, exploring beyond the initial and close-ended survey of the public opinions or public's opinion on the death penalty. When we embarked on this project, well-meaning friends who were also staunch advocates of the right to life were asking us, "Are you sure about this?" My reply was that we already know what we're up against. We're up against the tide of public opinion. So what have we got to lose? We wanted to look at what lies beneath the water, what drives their convictions, beliefs, experiences, and their fears. We wanted to stimulate more basic research in the public opinion of death penalty in the Philippines. We developed this mainly to explore the thought process of respondents and disentangle layers of perceptions about the death penalty. And so, without further ado, let me invite Dr. Mahar Mangahas of the Social Weather Stations to help us show you the results of our survey. Thank you very much. Would you like to stay on the table? Okay, yeah, kasi kailangan malapit siya. Please take our
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, this is a battery of about 30 slides or something like that. And I'll try to go over it and give you a bird's eye view of what these findings are. A little bit about the methodologies, about some earlier items that we had, not really studied items. And then this study, which is called the March 2018 survey. This is much more thorough, and there are some sections about it. And then the conclusion we can draw. Right, so let's proceed, May. Just very quickly, this is a representative national survey of 2,000 people. That's actually larger than you usually do. This divides the country into 5 areas with 400 apiece. Our normal is 300, so this is higher quality than that. And the difference is that it goes to the 15 and above age group. That's wider than our normal coverage. Our normal coverage is 18 and above, or adults. So this is by request, by arrangement with the sponsors to go down to 15 and above, which means that eventually you'll be able to analyze even these mid-teenagers. But we haven't looked at them now. So 5 areas instead of our normal 4, dividing Luzon into 2. which is actually fairer to the no, nothing fancy about the methodology. It's face-to-face with stage probability sampling, pen and paper interviews. Let's proceed, May, please. Right. This is the division of the group, and I think this is being distributed, right? This page will be distributed.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it will be distributed, so you don't need to rush and memorize things there. That's just background. That's the more or less the normal demographics of the nation. Maybe the only different thing is that, remember, this goes to 15 and above, not 18 and above. A little background about the internet. They're being concerned about what's happening, and we see that half of this population, 15 and above, uses the internet, which is less than what some of the internet people say it is. It's, say 80%. It's not that big. Next, half, little more, 53% use social media, 43% do not do it. And this is all background. And next, as to the use of the media for the news, you have here the frequencies of the use of the media, and I would look at the blues, dark blue meaning daily, and medium blue a few times a week, and light blue weekly, and so go all the way up to the weekly or more frequently. The top source is television. After that, more or less tied the radio and social media. Newspapers, the least. So, newspapers, I write for a newspaper once a week. Newspapers get to influence by influencing the other media. That's how it works. If it gets picked up, especially on television, then that's how newspapers can possibly influence the public. Then just some background to see whether we're talking about victims or people who live where there are victims. This is now survey results. Have there been heinous crimes in your locality in the past 3 years? Any? And more than half say none. And the rest, you see the distribution over there. So, of course, these affect people's opinion, but their personal connection is no, not that big. Next, this is nevertheless, right? Nevertheless, worry of becoming a victim is great. Worry of being falsely accused of committing a crime is great. This is a fact that we're trying to establish. There is concern. Just like in our other polls about the killings related to drugs, people are worried that they could become victims of these crimes. People are saying that they don't believe the police about the victims fighting back. To continue, this is actually being a crime victim in the past 3 years. 3% of households, and only a portion, and a third of those was more than 3 years ago. So this is the victimization rate, and this we can use later to establish the connection with opinion, and of course there should be some opinion. Victims are bound to be more concerned about it. So let's proceed to the findings themselves. Right. These are general attitudes. It's teachings. These are put into agree-disagree statements. Not Christian, but more than Christian. Love your neighbor as yourself is, recognized as proper. Thou shalt not kill. Of course. The hardest thing to accept is love your enemies. That's two-thirds, 70% accepted. Hard teaching to accept. Next. Background. 3 polls in 1991, 1992, and 1993. These were incidental to our polls at that time. So those surveys are not specific about the death penalty, but they have items there, and we keep everything, so that we can delve into the points. This is the issue of murder. People convicted of murder should be subject to the death penalty, and public in those times was in agreement with that, strong agreement with the death penalty for convicted murderers. We have used somewhat different circumstances now, but that's the background. Let's proceed. Here are also some previous items we have done in 1999, 2002, 11, and 17. Opinion as to whether the death penalty deters people from committing heinous crimes or not. And back in 1999, 2002, we had more mixed feelings about it, especially in 2002. But the feelings became stronger in 2011 and 2017. So there's a bit of a difference there in terms of the feelings about the death penalty being a deterrent. These are propositions as to why the death penalty should not be reimposed. The first proposition clicks with the public, namely that a convict can reform and change and be a good citizen. You have a 50 to 26% agreement with that. And the bottom two are positions to which the public reacts more or less neutrally. First is only the poor will suffer from the death penalty. There's agreement on that by a +4. And the possibility of miscarriage of justice, sentencing an innocent person to death. That's you got a neutral, you got a split opinion about that. May 2017, is that an error? It says 2017, this particular slide. That's wrong. Huh? Is correct? We did this in 2017? 2017? Oh, this is not the... Okay. This is not the current CHR project. All right, let's not be sure about that. Huh? This is not the current CHR project. So this is a mix of... okay. This is a mix of reports. All right, now, starting with this slide, we're starting with 2018 findings. What are you trying to think with me about? Huh? Oh, please, yes. Take over.
Yes, sir.
There's a skill. I need to be prompted. Okay, I'll just leave that.
Yeah, just request. Pwede bang paano? Hindi ako makita. Sorry, di pa lang matangkad. Just 6 slides. Okay, so we get to the March 2018 survey public perception. I will present 6 slides. Positions on the death penalty, preferred punishment for serious crimes. So, what we did was, in the survey, we asked sort of a perfect justice question. And it goes like this. It's a close-ended question. The death penalty should be reinstated for people who were proven by the courts to have really committed heinous crimes. And the net agreement shows it's plus 26. Just to give you a visual on that, if we will interpret it, 5 out of 10 agree that death penalty should be reinstated for those who have really been proven by the courts to have really committed heinous crimes. But of course, as I told you, we knew this already, that we were against public opinion. So let me show you the second slide. What we did was to pose a question that had options, and not just soliciting a binary answer of yes or no or I'm not decided. So we did list the list of crimes, and I believe this was patterned after the House bill that was passed on the death penalty, involving crimes involving illegal drugs. So if we take a picture in our minds, we can fairly say that 7 out of 10 think that death penalty should not be imposed on most crimes. So if we take a look at this, if we average it, only 3 out of 10 people actually want the death penalty when they are given options. Except for 5 out of 10 think that the death penalty should not be imposed on people who commit rape under the influence of drugs. So that's where it evens out, but basically only 3 out of 10 in this particular survey would want the death penalty. Next slide, please. And then we pose the question, do you agree or disagree with the provision in the Constitution that prohibits the death penalty? And there is a plus 23 net agreement. So if we take a look at the visual on that, 8 out of 10 are aware of the constitutional provision and that they agree, and the net agreement is plus 23. Another question. So of all those who agreed that the death penalty should be reinstated for people who were proven by the courts to have really committed heinous crimes, half of them said that because it deters crimes. And then 4 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 believe that it dispenses justice, and only 1 out of 10 believes that it solves the drug problem. Along with it, reduces the number of prisoners. So only 1 out of 10 believe that it will solve the drug problem. Just to take note also, the notion on deterrence is actually a misguided notion, because we have already said, and research shows, that the severity of punishment is not a deterrent to crime. And that Even the Supreme Court in People versus Mateo has shown that there has been a 71.77% rate of judicial error in death penalty cases. So that's almost 3 out of 4 persons were wrongfully sentenced to death, and it clearly shows that death penalty also does not automatically mean it dispenses justice. Another question that we asked is, what is the reason for those who are undecided? So we said that it depends on the gravity of crime. That's what we found out. So 3 out of 10 believe that it depends on the gravity of crime. 3 out of 10 believe that we have a questionable justice system. 2 out of 10 believe that the criminal will reform. 1 out of 10 had religious reasons for being undecided. And 1 out of 10 also did not know or refused to answer the survey. The last slide that I'm going to show you is their reason for disagreeing. So the reason for disagreeing, 4 out of 10 said and cited religious reasons. 2 out of 10 cited the possibility of reformation. 1 out of 10 said that there were alternatives to the death penalty. 1 out of 10 said questionable justice system. 1 out of 10 for humane reasons, and 1 out of 10 death penalty is a questionable policy. A lot cited religious reasons for disagreeing with the death penalty, and some believe that criminals can be reformed. So this shows that religious belief of people is also, or could be, a strong factor that should be considered by legislators in their decision whether or not to reinstate the death penalty. There is a need for a stronger argument here why religious reasons should be considered, perhaps because religion is ingrained in Filipino culture and foundations of the family, or we can also refer to previous positions of the Vatican and the August 2018 announcement from the Pope that death penalty is now inadmissible. So there's a need to educate people in order to inform them as to why, aside from religious reasons, death penalty should not be reinstated. So that's my part. And I give you again, Professor Mangas.
Thank you, Karen. All right, so we'll go through other parts of the survey. These are attitudes about the justice system, which, well, let's just go through them one by one. First is whether people who have been proven guilty are punished. And, the importance of, what's the importance of this in the serving of justice? Punishment. 86% say it's important. So this is top in people's minds. If you don't have punishment, where is the justice? Secondly is equal treatment of the classes, rich or poor. There's a 72% who say that that's important. And then you have 69 who say that deciding swiftly on cases is important. So these are attributes of case developments that people look for when determining if justice is occurring. Next, please. All right, this is a very, very basic tenet in law. An accused person is presumed innocent unless proven guilty in court, and you have a 67 to 17 score in that. So I'd say general public know this and believe this, and this is, and say yes. they innocence must be presumed. Next, please. Now here's do these types of persons have true respect for the human rights of Filipinos? Do they have very much, somewhat much, not sure, little or very little respect for the human rights of Filipinos? And here you would see a very, very wide range of replies depending on the occupation. The trusted occupations at the top and the less trusted occupations at the bottom. Everybody gets a positive score, by the way. But teachers, church people, soldiers, physicians, they're you might say a well-trusted category. First-class soldiers are there. At least 7 out of 10. Teachers, 9 out of 10, you might say. These are trusted people. We have a majority for human rights advocates, that's 56%. I mean 69%, and also a large net trust score. By the way, we say that net trust is good as long as it's at least plus 30. But for very good, we say plus 50. That's convention, SWS convention. One can use anything, but our convention is plus 70 is excellent. 50 to 60 is very good. 30 to 40 is good. And then if it's 10 or 20, we call that moderate, and if it's a single digit, we call that neutral. Positive or negative, we call it neutral. So by those terms, we would say politicians, well, politicians are the least trusted, and they're just neutral. 30%, 40% trust them, 32 do not trust them. So that's only a plus 8. Businessmen are next to there. Good for prosecutors, lawyers, police, and justice and paramedics. Very good for human rights advocates. All the others, excellent. Next, please. Retribution. Rules about retribution, which we tested. Do people believe these? Universally, that only God has the right to take life away. That you should not do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. Those are universally believed. Now, these other rules, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, that's only neutral. That's not, that's, I think, Old Testament somewhere. That's mixed, very, very mixed. Plus 7. And another one, that a life that is taken should be paid for by a life. That's not acceptable. That's definitely negative. You don't have to. That's not the proper way to amend killing of a person. Next week. Realization that justice can be miscarried. We are finding a lot of this. The possibility for convicting an innocent person, accepted by plus 26 net. The possibility for not punishing a true criminal, also plus 22. people realize it. And people here are, I think, being realistic. All right? That's not, realism is part of part of society. We have to take it into account. That many people in prison are actually innocent of the crime that they were supposed to have committed. That's accepted by a net plus 15. That's very significant. Or by significant, we use double digit net, plus 10. Because if it's at least double digit, we're sure that one side is higher than the other side. That's why we say neutral when it's single digit. Because you don't know which is the dominant side anymore at that level. And the last one, most people in prison are actually guilty of the crimes they are in jail for. Well, that's widely accepted. Most people are actually guilty by plus 37. But people realize there are innocent people there too. A second panel. Most people who commit crimes are punished according to the law. Yes, people say that. And that most people who commit crimes are caught. Yes, but also that most people accused of a crime are not serving sentence. They're out on bail while waiting for the courts to decide. And that most people accused of a crime have been in prison for a long time, just waiting for the court to decide on their cases. So these problems are well known also to the public, and they should be taken into consideration. Next. Now, Supreme Court findings about mistaken imposition of the death penalty in 3 out of every 4 cases, which I didn't know until doing this project. I didn't know that study, but we find 1/3 of the public saying they had heard of that, or maybe they had heard about mistakes. Maybe they hadn't heard about the Supreme Court thing, but at least they had heard that there were mistakes, and 2/3 only learned about it by being asked the question. Next, please. Wrongful execution. Very strong agreement that if the courts are certain that they are not wrongfully sentencing an innocent person to death, then it's okay to impose the death penalty. You have a plus 53 agreement of that. That is possible that the courts wrongfully sentence people accused of doing a crime is also very much believed, less. And as to the proposition that you can't correct wrongful execution of a person sentenced to death. Well, you have plus 23 there, although I would just imagine that they have another way of making up for it, right? Certainly not bringing the person back to life, but I can only explain this by imagining that there's some other way of making up for an error. Is the death penalty anti-poor? I mean, this is a proposition you always hear. What do people say about that? Many people in the death row are just poor people because they can't afford a good lawyer. Yes. That's 63 to 24. Only the poor, not the rich, are usually meted the death penalty. Yeah. That's 56 to 29. So the public are very much aware about the anti-equity nature of the death penalty. And then next, alternatives. Alternatives. First, if there was no death in the crime, then the prison sentence is proper instead of death. That's the strongest attitude, plus 64, right? And then that life imprisonment is sufficient for punishing heinous crimes, yes. And third is is another version of the proposition of imposing life imprisonment, yes. And the fourth is the proposition that the convict can reform. These are all very strong propositions that the public accepts. Now at the bottom is the issue about blood money. That we hear about this, I suppose, because of the practice of it in the Middle East, and have been, in fact, using it to release Filipino convicts in the Middle East. This is mixed. This is mixed. The issue of allowing the use of the blood money solution is only accepted by 40%. There's disagreement of 44%. That's a -4. So this is very, very mixed, and this is not a popular idea. Actually, if I may insert here, our overall assessment of the study implications is in that battery of items concerning punishing crimes linked to illegal drug use, because we tried all kinds of crimes there. In fact, the ones that were in the bill, the legislative bill, and none of them has majority approval when the options of life for 40 years or 20 years are included. When you put those options up there, then you get only 1/3 saying, well, it has to be death. Even for the most unpopular crime, which is rape under the influence of drugs, it's 47% who say that deserves death, rather than imprisonment for any amount of time. Let's go to the next one. Restoration. Restoration. The death penalty provides a comfort to the family of the victim, presumably, and then victim, yes. It speeds up justice for the victims, yes. And it redresses harm done to the victim. Those are all accepted propositions. The death penalty. I think that's the last one. So I would just emphasize that when you put the options of 40 years, 20 years, and life, then you don't get a large number for the death penalty for any of the crimes linked to illegal drugs. Usually you get about 1/3. That's, to me, the strongest finding of the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahar. just to be able to recapitulate. From all these findings, I can sum up our learning into one thing. Facts form opinion, and the reverse is also true. Alternative facts, fake news also form opinion. And when people are given choices, they can make better decisions. From this exercise, the Commission learned that if people are presented with facts, they can make informed conclusions. Using the iceberg model, we looked into what is underneath the tip of the iceberg. It is very important to surface everything that's beneath the waters in order to get to the core of an issue. In this case, the death penalty. We also combine this with aspects of deliberative polling. This is a method where you educate first, give facts, give incontrovertible facts, invite experts to come in to talk about the issues, to ensure that the people are able to make informed choices. This survey is the first of its kind in the Philippines and will start a new way of doing things. This method also shows us that if people are given options, their responses will be more diverse and can convey what they truly believe in. In this case, we were able to support existing studies that debunk the myths about the death penalty. We were also able to prove that dealing with the death penalty issue should be more than just asking whether to reimpose it or not. Our survey showed that if people were given a choice, 7 out of 10 would not choose the death penalty. And so, this should be a reminder for us all. We have to frame our issues in a way that gives our people alternatives. We also have to note that there were instances when the answers of the people had contradictions, as where we found that 6 out of 10 believe that the death penalty can only be imposed if the courts can show that they are certain not to wrongfully sentence an innocent person to death. But at the same time, 6 out of 10 also believe that it is very possible for the courts would wrongfully sentence people accused of doing crime. In this instance, we are made aware of the need to work more for our advocacy. Anti-death penalty advocates would need to step up and be unrelenting in raising awareness to inform the public about alternatives to the death penalty and also about restorative justice. It is also good to note that the people's most trusted on who upholds human rights and dignity are the teachers. We also know where they get their news from, the most. On TV, and a consistently rising source is social media. We are directed by this knowledge not only to focus on teachers but also on the youth as the right to life ambassadors, to further our cause of building a nation that upholds the protection and promotion of the right to life. At the end of the day, when we keep on keeping on, we are able to say that there is hope for all, there is hope for life, and hope for the Filipino people. So we say no to death penalty. Maraming pong salamat.
Thank you, Karen and Dr.
Federal Parliament. In the Parliament, I'm also the convener of Australian Parliamentarians Against the Death Penalty. We had, as many might recall, an attack that occurred in Bali, a bombing that occurred that took 202 lives. 89 of them were Australians. I was one of 2 people that stood in the Australian Parliament and opposed the death penalty being imposed on those who committed the atrocity, the terrorists who did that. And I did it on the basis that you can't simply take the view that you're anti the death penalty except when it affects you. Otherwise, you'll be granted hypocrites. We also had a number of Australians apprehended for drug-related crime in Indonesia, and called the Bali Nine. And a number of those fellows were subject to the death penalty. I involved myself through a number of lawyers in the case about them. They were held on death row for 9 years before they were executed. I visited them in Kiribakan prison. Regrettably, that's where I caught malaria. But even the prison governor had told me that they were exemplary. One of them had become a religious pastor and administered to the pastoral needs of the prison community. Another became a renowned artist, teaching others in the prison community to express themselves through art. As I say, they're regarded as exemplars. I would have thought that would have been an exercise of showing positive rehabilitation that could occur. It was a drug-related crime. No question about how heinous that is and what drugs do in our community. But his two lives that clearly were turned around, and yet they were executed 9 years after their arrest. So I think that brought home to many in Australia when we focus on the death penalty. Our last capital punishment in Australia was in the 1960s. Australia has a revulsion to the death penalty. We don't support crime. We don't support what drugs do in our community, but we do not support the taking of life. We strongly hold to the view that any attack on human rights is an attack on our respective humanity. When I've spoken on this on many occasions in my country and other places, and particularly here, where this is predominantly a Catholic nation, so I've often referred to the words of a Muslim jurist. Actually, I quoted them when I spoke at the De La Salle University yesterday with your chairman, so I still have the quote with me. If I'll just conclude on these remarks. Judge Ismail Mohammed summed up the death penalty in these words. By the way, he was the Chief Judge of the South African Constitutional Court. The death penalty sanctions the deliberate annihilation of life. It is the ultimate and most incomparably extreme form of punishment. It is the last, most devastating, most irreversible course of criminal law, involving, as it necessarily does, the plan and calculation, termination of life itself. The destruction of the most precious gift bestowed on all of humankind. And I think that would probably sum up why we are here today. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I think what you're doing in the Philippines, being able to assess people's attitude to this, is the correct way of going about this. I'm not sure I enjoyed the slide that showed the politicians are the most fortunately they didn't have used car salesmen. But when we're talking about the death penalty, yesterday I spoke to students about extrajudicial execution. Professor, you spoke about the prospect of how many mistrials could occur where people would inadvertently sentenced to death, and I think you used the figure current about 70%. With extrajudicial execution, there is no trial. There isn't the production of evidence. And we are leaving this in the hands of possibly police or vigilante groups to make the decision. And surely that decision is not being made on your collective behalf. I wonder how many miscarriages of justice is occurring there. Life is precious. The most human aspect that we enjoy. Of all our rights, the most precious must be, and must always be, the right to life itself. I thank the chairman for inviting me. I know my colleague requires me to go somewhere else, but to be here on the 16th day of the 16th anniversary of the World Without a Death Penalty Day, I think is very important. I know I'll be speaking on this subject in the latter part of this month. As I understand, their government is also reconsidering, which is over attentions at the moment, but reconsidering the value of the death penalty. And by the way, for all our lawyers here, I don't need to tell you, there is no credible empirical evidence that shows that the death penalty is a deterrent to crime. Thank you very much.
Alright, thank you so much, sir, for that insight. We'd like to hear more if there are any.
Just give please come forward Dr. Grace also.
To the statement on this World Day Against Death Penalty, and I have the privilege of reading it before all of you. Office of Senator Laila M. De Lima, message on the World Day Against Death Penalty. On 18 December 2016, the United Nations General Assembly approved a resolution reaffirming previous moratoriums on the death penalty. It reiterates that the prohibition of arbitrary taking of life is a jus cogens norm that applies to all states. This landmark resolution demonstrates once again the primacy of human dignity, which should not be devalued by such punitive measures as the capital punishment that leads to irreversible and irreparable consequences. This year, on the occasion of the World Day Against the Death Penalty, it is imperative to remind ourselves of that most fundamental of all rights, the entitlement to life, which is inherent, inalienable, universal, and non-derogable. It is a right that belongs to us all, regardless of race, color, sex, gender identity and expression, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other statuses. It is a right first recognized in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and subsequently adopted and amplified in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, all of which are ratified by the Philippines. The right to life is of such importance that some regional state groupings have open, public, and institutional policy support for its protection. Specifically, in 2017, the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and the Secretary General of the Council of Europe issued a joint declaration that unequivocally opposed the death penalty. Similarly, the Organization of American States, through the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, developed its protocol to the American Convention on Human Rights to abolish the death penalty. These firm efforts to move away from the death penalty are the outcome of rights-based developments in law and in science that point to the flaw in the typical argument that the imposition of death penalty is a key deterrent to the commission of heinous crimes. What deters and resolves crimes, rather, is a well-oiled and thoroughly functioning criminal justice system, one that ensures swift and certain accountability for the crimes committed and the imposition of commensurate penalties to the wrongdoers. In my own humble way, as a human rights defender and legislator, I am trying to do my share of advocating against the death penalty. In 2016, in one of the very first bills that I filed, I was pushing for the introduction into Philippine criminal laws the penalty of qualified reclusion perpetua to ensure that even in extraordinarily heinous crimes, our policy direction looks at restorative justice over punitive or retributive measures, while equally aware and conscious of the need to bring to justice perpetrators of the most egregious offenses. Today, I join fellow human rights defenders and the global community in renewing and sustaining the campaign against the death penalty. May we all recall, by way of self-reflection, the words of the late Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, thus, and I quote, "Can the state, which represents the whole of society, and has the duty of protecting society, fulfill the duty by lowering itself to the level of the murderer and treating him as he treated others? The forfeiture of life is too absolute, too irreversible for one human being to inflict it on another, even when backed by legal process. No to death penalty, yes to all measures that uphold and protect human dignity. Signed, Laila M. De Lima, Custodial Center, Camp Crame, October 10, 2018. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We'd also like to recognize Dr. Grace.
Good morning to everyone. I am Professor Grace Gorospe-Hamon of the Department of Political Science and now Director of E.P. Clark and a partner of the Commission on Human Rights in our attempt to influence the next generation of young people through our bringing around the whole advocacy against the death penalty. I'd like to congratulate the Commission on Human Rights. This is really path-breaking, as well as the social legislation, because for the very first time, I think, being given the empirical data, the nuances, the seeming choices that our people seem to make because of the popularity at some point of our politicians, show us that in this country, people, when given alternatives to do as you have said, they would opt for life. And just like our colleague from the Australian Embassy, the reason why personally I do give my life against the option of death is because I sat in what is called the Conscience Committee during the time of era, and out of 9 of 10 cases, we were able to influence the president not to impose the death penalty on 9 out of 10. It was because of the five-member committee at that time. It was not politicized. We were not above ground. We did our work, and because we talked to both convicts as well as their victims, who are usually their own daughters, we still believed and formed an opinion that, especially in a country where there is a lot of miscarriage of justice, the death penalty should never be imposed. And of course, not only in this country but all over the world. And thank you and congratulations for academe being part of this. It's different when we have empirical evidence that no one says the preferences of our people. It makes us feel good, right? Because for a while we thought, because of the popularity of this regime, we thought that people want people to die because of their involvement in drugs. So marami pong salamat sa inyong lahat. Salamat. Ang ganda ng pakiramdam ko personally.
Thank you, Dr. Grace. Any more who wants to share their sentiments from our civil society partners? If there are any, I'll open the floor to our friends from the media for questions. Yes, Adrian.
Good morning. Adrian Ayarico, PBS-CBN. The net agreement on there's a plus 95 net agreement on attitudes regarding people's Filipinos beliefs that God is the only one who can take away the life of a person. Why is it that half of Filipinos still want the death penalty and not 9 out of 10 Filipinos do not want the death penalty? Somehow the attitudes don't translate to the decision, actual decision.
Actually, like what we said, it depends on the question. When you want to ask a question and it just generates a yes or no, then most probably you'll get an answer only by yes or no. But if you have options to that, then that's the only time. And as we said, only 3 out of 10 would still want the death penalty, even if there are options. And there are other possibilities that we can explore if we take a look at the 30%. But suffice it to say that only 7 out of 10 do not want the death penalty. And then 1 in 10 only believe that it will solve the drug problem. because that was offered as a solution. And obviously, it's not a solution, as we see in reality. But it also coincides with that opinion that only 1 in 10 believe that it will actually solve the drug problem.
Dr. Mahas, would you like to add?
This is a common trait among those who are looking for quick answers. It's essentially mistaken theory. You say, if 9 out of 10 this, then why not 9 out of 10 that also? Well, so you have a fact saying that the second proposition did not follow from the first. Therefore, the proposition was false. All right? And you should look for a different one. It's not up to the researcher to prove to you that your proposition was false. It's already false. But if you want to look for the answers for the second question, then you have to do more research. That's all. Do more research. There are lots of things there that we say, so it's like that. Then we study it some more. You do not put the burden of disproving your theory on us who have already disproven it. But you don't know the reasons for everything. It's up to you to find the reasons for that. And we can help you if you were to give us some clues, some leads, like, could it be A, could it be B, could it be C, could it be D? Then we can examine each of those. But that examination is not already embedded in the study because it wasn't thought of from the very beginning. And studies are like that. They never think of everything from the very beginning because we don't know what's the outcome is going to be. So it's actually quite unfair and illogical to ask the question, if 9 out of 10 here, why not 9 out of 10 there? I hope you will accept that that's actually an unfair question and that you're receiving it, in a friendly way. Because I could imagine that, there are also people who could be impatient and say, in the first place, you should examine your logic.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yes, that's right. But there are other people also here who
As a
want
follow-up,
real question.
As a follow-up, so now comes in the options that people are given options. May I ask what were the exact options given? Life imprisonment?
It's 20, 40, life imprisonment, and death penalty. 20, 40, life imprisonment, and death penalty were the options. Yeah.
Because we don't have the
You don't have.
It's in the
You
hands
don't. Actually, just to go back to your first question also, remember that we asked a perfect justice question. So if you committed a crime, and the courts prove that you really committed a crime, so that's a perfect justice question. Wala namang perfectong hustisya, di ba? So yun ang sinasabi namin dito. There is no perfect justice. There is no perfect, infallible justice system. So that's the reason why we should not also impose the death penalty.
Alright, any more questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I'm Maya Fuentes, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Spain in the Philippines. First of all, I would like to thank you for this event today and for the service that you carried out. Spain is very firmly committed against death penalty. Spain was behind the creation of the International Commission Against Death Penalty in 2010, and the secretariat of the said commission is in Madrid. And the abolition of death penalty is one of the top priorities of Spanish foreign policy. Therefore, that is, well, of course, the reason why we are here. We have been working with the Philippines on this field for many years, and ex-President Gloria Macapagal has been in Spain several times for this reason already. Therefore, well, we are firmly convinced that, as it has already been said, death penalty does not reduce the number of crimes. It does not give any relief to victims, and it is. We believe that it is the obligation of the state to first and foremost make sure of the right to life of all its citizens. Therefore, for all these reasons, we would like to keep on working with the Philippines to avoid the reinstatement of death penalty, and we just would like to thank you again for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am, for that. Are there any more?
Sorry. I understand politicians are the least trusted, but it's up to our congressmen, senators to reinstate the death penalty. Would you be submitting the results of this survey to Congress?
Yes, of course.
Of course, we will. It's in the kits already, and we will distribute it after our event. And of course, we did say already the same things, but this time we go backed up with our survey results and our research on it. So this just bolsters our position, and it has been unwavering from the start of the creation of the Commission on Human Rights. So we will be happy to share this with our legislators.
Any more questions? Going once, twice. But before I let you go, we'll show you a quick video on an initiative also with universities. It's called the university-based dialogues against death penalty. So we'll cue into the video.
Our partner here is UP Clark, of course, and then we went to several universities. So this is basically a summary. It's only, I think, about 3 minutes or 5-minute video. So please watch.
Sobrang magaan ng dignidad.
Ladies and gentlemen, our three distinguished speakers that will be giving their opening remarks. Can you give yourselves a hand for coming today? We want to namely, personal, family, and ideological interests. So, this day is jam-packed with very substantial presentations. Many of us have been victims of greater injuries such as assault, abuse, rape,
or death of a spouse or a loved one, or violent crime. Our suffering is real.
Headed by Commissioner Karen Gomez Lopez.
RA 9346, an act prohibiting the imposition of the death penalty in the Philippines, was signed by the President.
Promoting culture of life and respect for human dignity. To this, we must continue to say no to the imposition of death penalty.
They believe that it's mukhang crime, that you're not doing anything wrong, that you should not be afraid. Another reason is that it's to prove our justice system's credibility. Ano ba talaga ang dapat pagtuunan ng pansin sa usaping death penalty? Ang kapakanan ba ng mga biktima at pamilya nila? O kapalaran pa ng mga bumibiktima?
Hindi siya kung nadadaan sa kung pasasan, ay yung dasalan, maputuhan ng natin, rather, nakukuha mo daw yan at daw sa kung pasasan. Alam mo kung ang prosyekto ng national budget ng justice system? 2%.
So how can you justify po na the death penalty is anti-poor? Yun nga po, kung marami nga ng population natin is lahat lang mahihirap.
At hindi nagiging nalantas ng iyong kabuhayan. Regardless of who you are, where you are, what you are, the law should apply to everyone equally. So why are we solidly against the death penalty? The church teaches, in the light of the gospel, that the death penalty is inadmissible.
Nakita ko po, kinakalimutan po siya. So hindi ko pa naiintindihan. Akala ko po, oras na hindi tayo na siya. Grabe, bugbog na bugbog ko ang dignidad ng pamilya po namin.
Respect for all human life and opposition to the violence in our society are reasons why we indefinitely reject the death penalty.
In the Philippines, the history of the death penalty swings like a pendulum.
Thanks to the Lord, the death of her mother, nothing's happening the way she died. Hindi pa rin nagbago ang position ko, extend penalty. Doon sa nasiyan ng mother namin.
The reason for abolishing death penalty in the first place is that we want to uphold the right to life. Pero siguro po yung mga present dito ngayon, 100% na magsasign sa ating petition and commitment against the revival of the death penalty. And may I cordially request our commissioners to lead the signing of the petition.
I would like to thank the youth, yung mga millennials natin, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. You have the power. You have the power to communicate. So communicate the message well, communicate the right to life well.
If you want to know more of the work of the Commission on Death Penalty as well as all other initiatives, we are CHR Gov.ph on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And our website is chrgov.ph. We have snacks prepared for everyone, but there will be a celebration of Holy Mass at 11:30 at the CHR Session Hall. Lunch will be served at 12:30. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.